Hey there! Is today your first time here? Or maybe your first time in a while? If so, maybe you're wondering exactly who we are and what this church is all about. Well, we'd like you to know that we're a group of ordinary people who are on an amazing journey together, following Christ. Our guide is the Bible because it's the divinely inspired Word of God, and it will never take us in the wrong direction. Along the way, we hope you'll see that we are welcoming and spiritually passionate, and that getting to know you is a big deal to us. We know that the road is rough sometimes, but we'll work really hard to bring you practical and relevant messages to equip and encourage you through life's ups and downs. We want you to know that we care about this community, and we believe that it's our job to make it a better place. So, no matter who you are or where you've been, we're glad you're here with us today, and we hope that you'll join us on our journey, following Christ and living out His plan for us. So, welcome to church.
Good morning, Victory. How are you? It's good to see you all. Me and Pastor this morning, we are hanging out. Can't wait to worship with you all. Just want to welcome all of our first time guests to this experience online. We are happy to have you. If you are a first time guest sharing with us, we ask that you would go to our church website, www.everythingvictory.org, and fill out one of our guest cards. We want to connect with you. We want to stay connected throughout this time. And we just welcome you and welcome all Victory Champions. We love you so much. Today, Pastor have us in a wonderful series this whole month of May concerning mental health. So we're going to be dealing with mental health today and throughout the month of May. I ask that if you have any questions about depression, if you can submit those questions, you can do them in the inbox of Victory, our Facebook inbox, this morning throughout the worship experience. So when it's time for us to chat, we can have your questions and answer them live. You can also send them privately through the DM, or you can post them in the comments. We are connected to you. We can see them, and we love you all so much. Thank you for worshiping with us.
Amen. I am happy to be here this morning. We are beginning our new series on dealing with depression. And I had some things I wanted to discuss, and then we posted on our social media last night that we were receiving questions. So First Lady received some questions, and we'll be addressing them today. I wanted to talk about dealing with depression this morning, and when you talk about depression, it really limits some stuff that we deal with, because mental illness is something that's very common in the world today. Statistics show that that 10% of the U.S. population dealt with depression in 2016 alone. And I wanted to kind of cover some stuff, and we've been talking about different things that affect people, and I wanted to spend some time today talking about it. And our reference scriptures this morning will be 1 Kings 19, chapters 18 and 19, and those we're going to use those two chapters to kind of reference a little bit about the life of the prophet Elijah and some depression that he went through. That's pretty obvious, can be compared to some of the stuff that we deal with today. So that's what we're going to talk about today. 1 Kings chapter 18 and chapter 19. To me, there are three signs, because most people that are dealing with depression don't realize that they're dealing with depression. And so we wanted to kind of talk about some specifics of things that cause depression. And then we're going to talk about some ways that we can handle depression. And then we're going to come back and receive some questions. So the three things that we have to talk about today, the first one is the first sign that you're dealing with depression is that you're physically drained, that you are physically exhausted, going through different stuff, trying to struggle with life and different stuff that's going on, and you're burnt out. The prophet Elijah in these verses he's explaining to us and showing us how to deal with success and how to deal with the success of life. And what he's done in chapter 18 is he's defeated the prophets of Baal, and he's after a great victory. And most people feel like depression comes after huge failures, but the truth of the matter is that because we are emotionally wired to understand that failure is a part of life, it's sometimes some of us struggle with the fact that succeeding can actually be a possibility. And what do you do after you succeed? And the prophet in this one, he was physically drained. He had been up all night while the prophets of Baal had prayed to their God, and he even taunted them in chapter 18 and talked about call loud or maybe he's asleep. And they did all of that, and then he called fire down from heaven. And when you experience great victory, it sometimes comes with the cost of physical draining, and you physically drained, and you're tired. It's sometimes that we always pay attention to the people and the stuff that we go through, but the truth of the matter is sometimes the battle itself, whether you win or lose, takes a lot out of you. Yeah. Some people are casualties of the battle, and you don't realize that. So you have that to struggle with. And the first thing that we realize about that is you're struggling with that thing of being physically drained. Sometimes it comes off that you're super tired, but the truth is that if you're lack of motivated, you everything seems to be tired and long and stressful, then you're probably battling with a level of depression. Understand this, that every depressed person does not look the same. That your vision is not the same for everybody dealing with depression. That just because one person dealt with it this way, someone else might deal with it totally different. But watch this, but you have to appreciate the one powerful thing in this text is that what he did was he ran. All he heard was a threat from the queen, from Jezebel, and he ran from her. And that when you've experienced great victory, the enemy always comes in with a threat. And you have to appreciate what he did, because the Bible says that he ran, and after a great success, you would wonder why would he run? But because the threat came after the victory. Because people come to you worrying about what you're going to do and how you're going to deal with life and these things that are affecting your life. You deal with that being physically drained. The second thing, and I got to move quickly because we got a lot to cover. The second thing you have is to be emotionally depleted. It's right here in the text. In 2 Kings 19, 1 Kings 19 and 2, he talks about how the other prophets, how everyone else had died, and how he was the only one living. Because when you're emotionally drained, your confessions become non-realistic. Watch this. He didn't know everybody in the nation, so how could he know that everybody else had bowed to Baal? He had really, see, we start making, nobody loves me, but you didn't ask everybody. When you're physically drained, your confessions are unrealistic. Watch this, and they're unfounded. They are personally put upon yourself, that you put the confession, what I call self-justification. It's right because that's what you wanted to do. It's right because that's what you declared. It's right because that's what you desire to make the reality of your life. But the truth of the matter is that most of us struggle with trying to deal with life while we're trying to go through, and the weight on us is not always physically. Sometimes you think yourself into a tizzy because you've told yourself that if I don't make it out of this, then I'll never be anything. I'll never equate to what I'm supposed to do. I'll never get to where I'm supposed to get to. But the truth of the matter is that if you are dealing with an emotionally depleted person, that you are so tired and you get just, in the words of Fannie Lou Hamer, you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. That's a sign of depression. The first thing is that you're physically drained. The second one is that you're emotionally depleted. The third sign that you are dealing with depression is that you are spiritually disconnected. And the text is right there on your screen. It's 1 Kings 19, 3 and 4, and then 1 Kings 19, 9 and 10. He's spiritually disconnected. When God shows up, he asks God, why are you here? Y'all don't want to talk with me this morning. You get so wrapped up in your own despair that you start telling God, I didn't think you can't come this low. I didn't think you cared anymore. Depression either becomes mental workout or a confession lifestyle that is completely against what God has told you. So those are the three things that you are physically drained, you are emotionally depleted, and you are spiritually disconnected. But the 6 signs, and I'm just give you these, and then we'll go on to the questions because I don't want to take up too much time explaining these if y'all have already sent your questions out. The 6 signs of dealing with them, 6 things that you have to do when you're dealing with them. And some of these are found in the text as well. And I'm going to put them all on the screen. You won't be able to see me for a second. The 6 things are when you're dealing with depression. The first thing that you have to do is get rest and refreshment. You have to be able to go somewhere and sit down. Somebody type in the comments, sit down. Just sit down. Quit trying to do everything all the time. Sometimes you just need to go somewhere and sit down. And that word refreshment literally means to get nourishment. We're trying to get to refresh yourself. We're trying to build yourself up. We're trying to get this thing inside of you where you're actually taking care of yourself. The second thing is don't entertain negativity. You have to stop.
That's a big one.
Letting people speak into your life that are negative. Watch this. I've had to explain this even to my children, that just because you come back with something smart to say, keep away from people that are always negative. They don't always deserve your time. Watch this. And you have to treat them like my wife taught me. She taught me when we first started dating. I was dealing with a situation that I didn't know how to fix or how to handle. She told me to treat it like fire. She literally said that if you treat people that are negative like fire, what does that mean, preacher? It literally means that you have to give them, watch this, you have to give them, stop giving them air. Because when you give negative people air, they keep burning. They keep negative stuff in your life. The third thing you got to do is take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Depression always makes you seem to think that other people are worried about you when you aren't taking care of yourself. You say that you're tired, but you've not exercised. You say that you are exhausted, but you're not eating. You say that you feel weighed down, but you're not doing anything to press yourself forward. You have to take care of yourself. The fourth thing and the fifth thing seems to be the same, but they're not. The fourth thing is reconnect with God.
Yes.
Get back in a right relationship with God. That's personal. That's between you and God. That does not involve the community of the church. That literally involves you saying, God, I'm back. God, I'm in this place and I'm with you. I'm sold out for you. I'm with you, locked in for whatever we are going to do. Then the second part of that is then fellowship with like-minded people. Why are you saying fellowship with like-minded people? Because in step 2, you eliminated some negative people, which means what? You have free time. And what most of us deal with the cutting off, but don't deal with the growth. Y'all go. I'm gonna make sure you see me on that one. Most people are good with the cut off, but we're not good with the growth. It's the growth that actually makes you stronger. It's the growth that actually builds you up. It's the growth that watch this, because cutting people off eliminates them from coming into the next season. But what you have to do is prepare for your next season, because when you get new people in your life, fellowship with like-minded people, it watch this, it creates new habits. And I'm gonna talk about that, I know, sometime today, because I got a whole revelation this week about dealing with habits and goals. Is that you have to fellowship with like-minded people, because like-minded people set limits and guidelines on you when you don't want to appreciate what you are doing. Because if they're like-minded and want the best for you, then they will set limits and goals in your life. Sixth thing, now I'm through, is get professional help. It's right here. You have to appreciate professional people. Quit thinking that it makes you less of a person because you go talk to somebody. Don't quit thinking that you are not a good person because you're struggling. And watch this. Most people's job pay for them to go to counseling. It's a part of your package. It's a part of your benefit. Watch this. You're paying for it and not reaping the benefits of what you're paying for. Get professional help. If you realize that you're dealing with depression, go talk to somebody. Well, preacher, I thought preachers don't talk about going to get professional help. Look at me again. Let me pull it back in. Go talk to somebody. If I go talk to somebody, you should go talk to somebody.
Yes, Lord. Yes.
Watch this. I got God and a counselor. Why? Because I need one to hear my faintest cry, but I need somebody else to be able to walk me verbally, physically through some stuff that if I'm not hearing right from God, why would I not be hearing right from God? I'm glad y'all asking good questions this morning. Y'all asking questions before we even ask y'all to ask questions. Why wouldn't you be hearing right from God? Because you're dealing with depression. So now you've put a voice on God that he didn't speak. You're putting words in its mouth because you're not thinking clearly because you're dealing with depression. And I know this ain't everybody on that, but understand this. If 10% of the entire U.S. population dealt with it in 2016 and they didn't ask me, I might have been a part of the group. So that means to me that how can you tell me who all did if you didn't ask everybody? So if I'm telling you that 1 out of 10 did, then how are you going to tell me in 1 year, not in their life, in 1 year? Then you've lived 4 years since then. How do I know that you're still not battling with it? That's what we came here today to talk about. May is our month of mental illness, and that's what we're going to be talking about all month. Different mental illnesses that are striking the world, our culture, our people. Get you some help. Get you some rest and eat and do better. I'm going to turn it over to First Lady, and I'm going to answer any questions she got. Y'all shoot y'all questions in the chat. She's in there. If you have any questions for me, it's on you, First Lady.
Well, Pastor, I want to just say that was some powerful, powerful words that you have already spoken, and just giving us those steps have been is eye-opening for me and refreshing. You all can still send in your questions right now. I have a couple of questions that's already come in last night. I'm going to read the first one. So Pastor can be able to definitely answer this one. Pastor, I struggle daily. Sometimes I feel like I'm losing my mind. I'm just not happy with where my life is and myself. Where do I start to get back on track?
You're struggling and you're trying to get your life on track. This is what I would say. It's actually in our dealing with depression. The first step, rest and refreshment. I would tell you to get some rest. Most people that are struggling with the get up is that you're doing two things. One, you're not resting enough because you're trying to fix whatever it is that's weighing you down. The second thing I would say is get you a good eating habits, that you are taking care of yourself in the concept of what you're eating and what you're developing your lifestyle around. But then the third thing I would say is get a regiment where you are exercising at some level. And I know I would probably be the wrong person to tell you this, but a good exercise regimen literally means that you're pushing yourself to do more than what you're used to doing. So I would literally say that you have to be able to push past what you're used to doing. Get you some rest. Most people think that getting up, getting started is the answer. It's not. It's sometimes sitting down and taking a break and coming up with a plan. We are so good at working the plan out that we end up burning ourselves out. That worked out better than I thought it was. We are so good at working the plan out that we burn ourselves out, but we actually should write the plan out. That if you write it out, write the vision, make it plain, so that when men are running, it's big to see, that they can see what you're doing. So what does that mean? Is that literally what you're trying to do is get yourself in a place, in a predicament where you are achieving what God has in store for you, but you've had the rest. Because watch this, I'm going to say this and I'm going to be through. One of the preachers that I've talked to this week blessed me because it made me want to start back working out. And what he said is that you have powerful message, but what are you doing with the vessel that he's given the message to? Are you taking care of yourself before you give the word to other people? And that's something that most people don't realize, is that you're trying to walk out the life that God intended for you, but we struggle sometimes with the reality of what we are giving God to do.
So, with this person, just kind of looking at what they were talking about, it's so hard, Pastor, sometimes to get started when you already feel like you are in this downward spiral. And from the question, it just seems like reading it, this person feels out of control mentally every time they start. Sometimes there's some form of roadblocks. So, just to kind of piggyback off of what Pastor said, I would also suggest seeing a psychiatrist, seeing a counselor, someone that can kind of help you slow things down mentally, where you can see small progress. And that's the thing. Once I see small progress, it begins to be motivation to keep going. And sometimes it can be so overwhelming. We'll try to start so big, and then it's not a success for whatever reason, and we're back into a downward spiral. So just get some form of help where it'll help you kind of slow things down, because most of those things are based on anxiety. I'm losing my mind. I'm struggling daily. I can't seem to get balance. Some of those things are kind of based in anxiety. And anxiety sometimes can be falsified. So you may feel like this tsunami when things are just basic, normal life things that's happening to you. So I would also say, seek help. Let's kind of go back. Earlier you talked about and you discussed some triggers. Do you consider fear as a starting point of depression?
I think fear is a igniter for it's okay. The way I feel about fear and depression is kind of how it's like mold growing in a house. It's the damp space, the damp, dark, empty space that mold becomes a breeding ground for. That's what fear is for depression. Is that fear, if it's not dealt with, if you don't get that wet stuff off the ground and out of that wall, it sets in and becomes mold. So I think that depression is that stuff that sits there, and 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 as it sits in your life, and if it's not dealt with and done away with and pulled out of and worked through, then it turns into depression, because you're sitting in a place of fear. And because we're not built for fear, the Bible says God did not give us a spirit of fear, But a preacher friend of mine said, but we picked it up somewhere. I don't know where I got it from. That I don't know where I got the spirit of fear from, but I picked it up somewhere. And that's the thing about it, is that we struggle sometimes with the reality of life, that fear becomes depression when it's undealt with. That you don't have to conquer the fear, but it's the reality that fear is, and acknowledging that you're afraid stops the depression. We spend so much time spiritualizing what reality is, that we forget that there are two different worlds, that there's a spirit world and a natural world, that you have to acknowledge the natural world's existence, but you understand that the spiritual world conquers it, that I'm afraid, but God is still God.
Yeah.
That's how I'm not depressed. I'm bruised on every. What's your favorite scripture? I'm perplexed, but I'm not destroyed. I'm bruised on every side. But not crushed.
Yeah.
That the reality is that I'm hurting,
Yeah.
but my faith says I'm still here.
Yeah.
That's how depression defeats fear.
You know, you preached a sermon and you dealt with fear a little bit in there, and you talked about it being false evidence appearing real. And I felt like that was so powerful, and it stuck with me, because as we deal with this question about fear, um, sometimes it's false. I mean, just think about moments in your life where you was afraid and you said to yourself, if I do this, this is going to happen. And it haven't even happened yet. Or if all this is just going to blow up and this is just going to be bad. And these things have not taken place. And we kind of get stuck in the thought of these things, and what fear do, it paralyzes our movement. And so we'll get afraid. We're now stuck, and we just go into this downward spiral into depression, and anxiety leads us there faster and faster, because it's just a whirlwind. It's a whirlwind of things that's happening right in your mind, messing with your emotions, manifesting your physical body. Some people will begin to actually get sick that's not even sick, because it's just inside of you fighting. So, it brings you into a place that it's a faulty reality. And if you take some time and slow down, you will realize, number one, you have to make a decision about whatever it is that's causing this fear. And you have to live with the decision and learn, just kind of like my mom would say, woman up and deal with it. Make the decision, try to make the best of the decision, get as much knowledge and wisdom you can, and then handle it. Take it, deal with it, walk through it. But sitting here afraid in this cocoon that's bringing you down into depression is not going to make matters better. It keeps you stuck. So that was really, really good. Let's get to a question that came in from the website, and then we'll go into the direct message. Also, okay, please send in your questions. You can direct message us. We are definitely viewing the direct messages now. Send us a DM, and we will say that question next. We're gonna go from a question that came in from the website last night. I've seemed to have tried everything. My marriage is a mess. It's like he does not hear me. I get so depressed when we argue, so I don't talk. How do I get past the fear of talking?
Oh. I would say, if you are getting depressed at the fear of the conversation, then I would say that you have to understand, like you were just saying about fear. I think the thing that most people don't realize about fear and depression is that they are what I would call anti-prophetic terms.
Okay.
That because most people don't understand that spiritually, whether positive or negative, you still have the power. That you still have life. The power of life and death is in your tongue. And in what you say is that I'm afraid to have the conversation because I'm afraid of the results of the conversation. So you never have the conversation. So you never know the result of having the conversation. When the truth of the matter is that it's not the conversation that you're afraid of, that this not the conversation that's causing the problem. It's the fear that's stopping you from having the conversation. Because if you actually stop for a second and realize that the worst thing that can happen through the conversation is deliverance. Watch this. Deliverance comes in two forms: in what you desire and what God desires. And when they're not the same thing, one will still get what they want. That if you have the conversation, it eliminates fear. Is the, like you said, and I was going to go there for a second, false evidence appearing real. It's the stuff that ain't even happened yet.
Wow.
That you're afraid of. I'm scared that if I say this, you're going to leave. Well, I should be in the place, watch this, if I wasn't, and that's a sign that you're dealing with depression. Because if you're really real about who you are and understand who you are and what you're dealing with, then you'll really see the power in, if I'm afraid to have the conversation, and then that means I'm afraid of you leaving, then that means that I'm afraid to be without you. Let's get to the root of the cause. Now I've put you in a place of God because I've released my joy to you.
Yeah.
And if my joy is in your lap, then you have authority over me that God never required or asked you to. And I've placed you as God in my life because I've told him no to tell you yes. See, when you're dealing with depression, that's why you have to go talk to someone, because you tell yourself, if I say this, I know they're going to be mad. But the truth of the matter is, I should be worried more about me than about you, because my mental health is what I have to deal with. And if you can't live with me in my reality and me walking in my truth, then we won't have a positive life or lifestyle to deal with.
Yeah. And one of the things that I just want to chime in to be able to say is, just for practical application when you're in this situation, because one thing that's happening now that through this virus, a lot of families and marriages are struggling because you're kind of forced to kind of be together all day long. So you have to come up with strategies, especially if you're dealing with depression and fear, at this day and time, as you all see that domestic violence statistics is going skyrocket at this point. And I'm saying domestic violence because I'm not saying women that's just being abused. You have women that's attacking men because they're just so stressed out. So one thing you can do, practical application, like if because the reason why this is important, because communication is a foundation in a marriage. Without it, there's no true intimacy, because this person don't know who you are. If you're not communicating and can't really articulate your needs, your desires, and just your wants, how would you know who I am? That means that I am not real. I'm not, who you see is not what you're getting. So one thing that we do, when it's time for us to communicate about real heavy situations, there are ground rules. We're not going to yell at each other. We're going to talk this through. You may not like what I have to say, or I may not like what you have to say, but we're going to just keep talking and working at it without someone walking out, without someone yelling at each other or cussing at each other. Like, there has to be some form of ground rules where it can be a safe place, because it sounds like with this question, if you're afraid to just start because of this happening and this happening, you have to get your fears out. I don't want to be yelled at. I know that what I say may sound crazy to you, but I just need you to listen. I just need you to hear me and create a safe place for both of y'all can talk. Now, it can't just be one-sided with you having all your ground rules and not any of his ground rules. His ground rule could be, it bothers me when you're sarcastic. If I'm talking and you're going like this and doing all this, I feel like you don't believe me, or I feel like you are sizing me up. So if you really want to make it work in your marriage, you have to start somewhere, and you have to create a safe place to communicate and be raw with your communication, and know that at the end, I still love you, you still love me, and this is who I am, and this is how I feel. It may not be facts on how I feel, but this is just how I feel. So let's go into the DM, and we're gonna read some questions that's come in from our direct message. Okay. Okay, so here's a question, and this is a very popular situation that most people go through and kind of get in this cycle and get stuck. I have an issue with grieving a tragic loss from years ago, but I believe that I am happy. I'm wondering if grief and depression exist within the same space, and if I'm doing more harm by suppressing my feelings to be strong. Strength is all I know. Whew. Can I start?
Sure, please.
I would start with that one because that's more me. I'm more of solid, strong, and sometimes when you seem to suppress, it's almost like yesterday my son, he in front of his grandmother, he was shaking his drink, and she said, don't open that because it's going to spill everywhere. And that's just what we do, our emotions, when we're going through grief and we don't grieve correctly. We shake the can, and then one day it just explodes. So I would say grief and depression does not have to share the same space. I want to directly answer that question. There's a grief process that will not take you into a depression. Yes, you will grieve a loss. Yes, you will. That's how you know this cycle that you're going through. You're in a depression cycle. That's how you know the difference between grief. Grief, you go through stages. Depression brings you down. So with grief, you go through stages. Some people be in anger. Some people be in denial, just not in the acceptance of it. But they don't have to share the same space. You're going to grieve. But if you are holding your grief in and not really dealing with the loss and accepting it, and if you're hurt and you want to cry today, cry, and have a support system and things like that, then it can tunnel over into some real depression. Like every time the day come around, you find yourself just overwhelmed with these emotions, this lack of energy. You just you find yourself in this place where it can't be something you've accepted, you've allowed God to give you blessed memories of. You share this with you and God, and yes, it hurts because you miss this person, but it's not something that takes you and you don't want to eat, you don't want to sleep, you don't want to see the sun outside. That's two different processes, two different things happening. So what you have to say, Sir Pastor?
This is what I would say, and I really want, probably is a different approach than First Lady, because two of the questions we got in are similar to dealing with grief and depression. One thing I would say that is my different view, and let me preference it by saying my view is different. It's not different from what most people think. It's a different approach to what most people think. I believe in vaccinating your grief.
Okay.
And when I say vaccinate your grief, vaccinations are the safe version of the disease that builds your immune system to deal with the disease. Most people want the antidote, which takes the disease away.
Yeah.
But grief has to be vaccinated because it can't be an antidote, because the what's causing the grief is still there. So there's no way to take the infection away.
That's good.
So you have to build my system to deal with it.
Yes.
The first thing you have to do with the vaccination, though, is acknowledge the sickness.
Yeah.
You have to acknowledge the sickness. You have to acknowledge that you're dealing with a problem. Not only do you have to acknowledge that you're dealing with a problem, but the second thing you have to do is take the medicine and realize that you're not eliminating the person you're grieving over.
No.
Because you can't do that.
No.
To eliminate the person you're grieving over is to look for an antidote.
Yeah.
Because the antidotes remove the issue. Vaccinations build you up to be able to deal with it. So it's not that I don't cry, it's that I don't cry like that anymore.
Right.
Because I know that even though this person is gone, what I focus on is what they left. You get me? So it's not that I'm not hurting, it's that the hurt doesn't control my entire being. So now I'm able to live in a space that nobody else really catches me in, because they're trying to figure out, am I really still dealing with it? But the truth of it is, I'll be dealing with it for the rest of my life.
Right.
But I'm stronger now. And instead of living with something, I'm living through something.
Through it, yeah.
So it's not that my loved one wasn't hurt. It's not that my loved one isn't here. It's not that I don't miss my loved one. And that used to, and understand that grief, depression is a form of grief. It's that if you're grieving, that's what weighs you down. That's what makes you not want to get up. That's what makes you act out at funeral services. Depression. Grief is and depression run hand in hand. But the difference is that once you take a moment and realize that these two worlds have to intertwine, that the reality that they're not here and the reality of where they are, that's the natural world and the spiritual world. That's all covered in this one verse. Absent from the body,
present with the Lord.
Come on, somebody. That I'm grieving, but I'm grieving, and watch this, and I'm crying. But I'm not crying like somebody that don't know that they better.
Right.
See, once you realize that in the natural world, I'm sad and depressed.
Right.
But in the spiritual world, if they could come back, they wouldn't. Because they see in Jesus. They marching around his throne. They entered into the 12 gates. We live in this life. We sing the songs and shout about it. But when you get to the finish line, nobody wants to celebrate that this is just a rehearsal.
Yeah.
Because when I get to the other side, see, that's where we have to get the joy from. That's why you can cry and laugh at the same time. Because I know I don't want to miss this person. If I had my way, I would, if I had my way, they would still be here.
Right.
But watch this. Grief has to be stomped out, watch this, with the elimination of selfishness.
Yes.
To acknowledge that me grieving, watch this, and the only antidote for my grief is a selfish act. It's to bring them back. It's totally for me.
Yes.
Because I'm yielding myself over to him that knows better than me. Because they could still be in pain. They could still be dealing with sickness. They could still be dealing with hurt. They could still be dealing with life issues that even I don't want to deal with. But I want them back just for me. So that's why I'm saying it has to be a vaccination, which is building me up. That now I can wake up and see certain stuff that I've used to go through. And now my system is built where I can handle it. I can still listen to certain songs. I can still go through certain days without my life being uprooted and turned upside down, because I'm now stronger.
Yes.
I'm wiser. I'm better.
I'm better.
Come on, somebody. That's how I deal with it. That's how I deal with the grief, because you struggle through different stuff trying to make people understand what you're going through. And most people don't get over grief, not because of them, but because they don't want other people to think that the person that they were grieving over still doesn't mean something
to them. Yes.
If I get over it, then I don't love them anymore. No, I got over it to love you. Because if you really loved me, you should want me to live the best life I can live, even if you aren't here to see it.
So what you're saying is, yes, we're saying the same thing. Yes, I'm in a grieving process,
right,
but I don't have to stay in a depression.
No.
So when we had another question that came in about grief leading to depression, when you're saying about the vaccine, what you're saying is when you're grieving, you're learning more and more how to deal with it.
Yes.
So you don't have to go into this downward spiral.
No.
You should progress through the phases and the stages of grief.
We do not grieve as those that have no hope.
So we're saying the same things. Amen. We just have to continue to, for everyone, and I'm loving this because including me, I just lost my mom, and going through this process as we continue to do it, you have to take the vaccine. You have to get ways to get strengthened. And one of the ways is what we're doing now. Number one, being informed, getting in a place where it's you and God, and then you're connected and you have fellowship with like-minded believers, things like that makes you stronger. Not saying that you won't grieve. You're just going to grieve with a different swag.
Right. And understand this, that my words are easily spoken when the actions are not easy to take.
Yeah. Yes.
And acknowledge that. Acknowledge that it's easy for me to say take the vaccine, but if you've ever taken the flu vaccine like I have, sometimes the flu vaccine is what it actually gets you sick. So I'm not saying that it's going to be easy. Nor am I saying it's going to be pretty. But what I am saying is that it works. Y'all ain't want to hear me. It's some preaching power on them 2 words. It works. It might not be easy, but it does work.
It works.
If you work the process, I promise you it's worth the time.
Yes. Now let me slide into this question. Earlier you spoke about a list of triggers, and you spoke about spiritual disconnect. And a lot of times we all can, I think everyone online, everyone in this house, we can all really relate to at some point feeling spiritually disconnected. That's when we was introduced to Christ, or even through our journey, some of us just kind of fall off and get disconnected. How important, I want to know this with this question. How important is church in connecting back to this process with God? So how important is the church? Because some people will say, well, I don't really need a church. How important is the church in the connecting back to God process? When you say spiritual disconnection and when you're depressed, you have to find a way to get connected. Or when you're depressed, you go through a spiritual disconnection.
Right.
How important is the whole church scene with that?
Well, twofold. It's super important from the aspect of the community that the church builds. And then it's not important if you're in the wrong church. Connecting with God can be very powerful if you're connected in the right community.
That's good.
Well, I'm finna preach my own life in a minute. That we're looking for houses, and while looking at houses, the first thing we did was look at the community the house was in. It's certain houses we didn't go to because they were in the wrong community. And when you're looking for a connection with God, you have to be in the right community, because watch this, he might be speaking there, but not your language.
Yeah.
That you have to get in the right place and sit down and get in the right community where you can hear him.
Yeah.
Speaking into your everyday life. And then watch this, it brings you covering and community.
Yes.
Because it gives you accountability. I just preached a whole 3-point sermon. Covering, community, and accountability. That it gives you covering, which means what? That we're going to be with you and cover you in prayer and be there with you. And then it brings you covering, it brings you community. It brings that group of people that are what? Let me put it on the screen. I don't want to mess over it. That are number 5, like-minded people. Mm-hmm. That it brings like-minded people in your life. What does that mean? It literally means that you can't ignore what you're doing with God because you have like-minded people in your circle. And when they're in your circle, they become accountability partner. Wow. You get the covering from the church. You get the community in the people. Mm-hmm. You get the accountability from a prayer partner.
Yes.
That when you get somebody, and that's how you come out of that stuff. Because when the church is the church, then there are certain things that we shouldn't be comfortable with you going through. Which is why most people would say that the church is nosy. But watch this. When I see my brother crying, I don't go and ask you what's wrong because I'm nosy. But because the sight of you crying makes me want to cry. The sight of you hurting makes me want to hurt.
Connection, like-minded.
Come on.
Wow. So let's talk about, I saw earlier you talked about and ways to deal with depression, and you talked about don't entertain negativity. What do you do in a situation, Pastor, when you are the negativity? You know, okay. We're giving the advice, don't entertain negativity. But if that person is the toxic person, in dealing with the depression, how do you know when you are the problem? When you are the common denominator, sometimes it's never, you don't get a moment, a light bulb. You just think it's everybody else. And you're going into this downward spiral, and you're alone. You don't have any friends anymore. And no one wants to really be around you. And the people that do, they're not really real. What happens when you are the negativity?
This is something I really I'm probably gonna do Tuesday night. I'm probably gonna handle this in depth Tuesday night. So I'm gonna give the overview of Bible study. Can I do the overview of Bible study for a second? Remind me I said this.
And we have one more question.
Remind me I said this. I'm gonna forget.
Okay.
That I'm gonna do this in Bible study. Y'all get ready. Bible study Tuesday night on Zoom. I did a quick commercial right there. You seen that? That the deliverance from depression, from being negativity, being a negative person, is in this. I'm finna. This was revolutionary when I thought of it. I don't know where I got it from. It set in my spirit.
Go ahead.
It's this right here. Habits over goals.
Okay.
And I was like, what is habits over goals? How does that make sense? It's as simple as this. That people become negative when they don't achieve what they thought they could. Then it sends you into, your word, spiral.
Yes.
That it spirals you into a situation that you are negative, that it becomes a spiral down. Because once you don't achieve one goal, you don't work as hard for the next one. And you don't get this done. And see, you keep setting these goals to be straight lines, because a goal has a beginning and an end. When you've done it, when you've achieved it,
right?
So it becomes this thing. So it has the habit of becoming negative. But a habit isn't the goal. Watch this. The goal is still achieved, but the habit never stops.
Yeah.
Because goals are straight.
It's oriented.
Yeah. Right. Beginning to end. Mm-hmm. But habits are circular.
Yeah.
That if I say my goal is to get a job that pays more, my habit is to start with one habit. I'm going to start waking up earlier.
Ooh.
I'm going to start reading more. I'm going to start walking more. I'm going to start handling my business better. I'm going to start doing this different. I'm going to start. So you create these habits
habits
that spin you. Watch this. The goal was
Come on,
here.
Pastor.
The habits spin you, and it may take you longer. But once you encompass that goal, the goal has been reached. But the habit is still going.
Yeah.
And takes you to the next level. So that's how you get out of being a negative person. Because when you eliminate things,
Yeah.
you fill them with new things. I keep saying it. We're good with the cutoff. It's the growing that causes us problem. And when we cut off stuff and we don't put something in its place, then it becomes an empty hole for negative stuff to dwell. Because guess what? That fear, depression, and doubt is like the wet spot getting ready to grow the mold. That it wasn't until you were in that place that you all of a sudden had problems and things to deal with.
Ooh. Mouthful. So, Pastor, do we have time for one more question?
Sure, we got one.
One more question. So, we live in a world that's built to emotionally deplete us. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And you talked about earlier how some triggers, is when we feel emotionally depleted. Because when you're emotionally depleted, you spend more money, of course. You make decisions based off of your emotions. You envy, you begin to envy. You compare and contrast lifestyles. Oh, my wife do this, your wife do that. And we just live in this type of society. My house is this house, your house is that house. And we put so many negative emotions toward this stuff. All of us is faced with it. Doesn't matter race, religion. It really doesn't matter, because the world is set up like this. Commercials on TV drive toward these things. So where do you start with when you're trying to balance out your emotions and how you achieve things? And how can we as a people become emotionally stable when we're not just doing stuff? Like, for example, the virus came out and then everybody just went crazy and started buying toilet tissue. It's just everybody started buying canned goods. I went into the store and it was almost like I was thinking, is the apocalypse coming? Like, why are we buying meat? And I thought it was just a virus. So we're kind of wired in this sense because of the way the world is. So what are some of your thoughts on becoming more balanced as believers in our decision-making processes and looking at things from what perspective?
I would say that the way to run our world in a healthy way and live our lives is this. Set your own habits. Set your own pace. The first level of deliverance, if I could have a deliverance service right here on social media, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, whatever else we own live right now. If I could have a deliverance service, healing and deliverance, I could lay hands through the internet. I would reach out and grab somebody's forehead and lay them out in the altar and get them delivered, would be from meeting other people's expectations. It would be literally that.
Wow.
That we compare ourselves to people that have had years of experience to get to where they are. And then we feel like we should be there overnight. The truth is, let me explain to you how I got this. I got this this revelation by Bernie Mac. I got it from Bernie Mac. I got this revelation because Bernie Mac had been a black African-American comedian running the circuit for years. And he was this well-known, across-the-board guy. Everybody knew Bernie Mac. We knew him from Def Comedy Jam.
Yeah.
We knew him from, coming around doing different stuff. And it wasn't until, not even the Kings of Comedy, did he get his credit. It wasn't until he got his TV show.
The Bernie Mac Show. And
they were putting him in movies. Then he reached the epitome of crossing over. And most of us desire crossing over. But the problem is that you don't appreciate the steps that got you there.
Right.
That's why I don't do goals. I'm doing habits now, because it's the habits that when they say I crossed over, I'm gonna keep doing what I was doing before.
Your habit.
I was on tour before. I was making moves before. Watch this. And when they come to me, I'm gonna have enough material stored up that I'll be able to keep going, because I've created the habit of writing and building myself and doing all of this stuff. And that's what we struggle with by trying to compare ourselves to people that don't have the experiences that we have. You can't. And I tell people all the time that a preacher friend of mine, mentor, told me I was going to preach at a preaching bowl, and it was for Good Friday, and it was for the last 7 sayings. And one of the things the guy said was, I said to him, I'm not a closer. I don't hoop.
Yeah.
It's not naturally my preaching style. I said, but they asked me to preach. And he said, did they know you? I said, yeah, they know me. They know who I am. They know what I do. He said, well, I tell you this. They might be able to close, and that's not your thing. He said, but I tell you one thing they can't do. And I said, what? And I was thinking he was going to tell me, pump me up to make me feel better, because it's my mentor. Right. He said, well, they might be able to preach better than you. They might be able to close better than you. Because he didn't say preach. He said they might be able to close a sermon. They can hoop. They can stick their finger in their ear and holler better than you. But one thing they can't do. And I was like, man, what is it? What? Tell me. He said, they can't be you. And that gave me the arrogance of on the most healthiest level. Because no matter what after that, I've always told people, you can do what you want to, but you can't beat me.
Yeah.
You can beat me, but you can't beat me. Because somebody came to hear what God gave me. Yeah. And that's where I hang my hat on what we do in today's world, is that I can't compare myself to other people, because what you get out of me is so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this was excellent. This was great. I pray and I hope that each one of you gotten something out of this. And also make sure that you stay connected with us on all social media aspects, especially for the month of May. We'll be taking questions, and we'll be doing talks all month long concerning mental health. Today we dealt with depression, and the next couple of Sundays we'll deal with other topics related to mental health and wellness.
All right. Well, if you are looking for a church home, this is the time that we ask that you shoot us a text message with these 2 words on it. Join Victory. You can send it to this number, 833-489-7279. We'll put it on our social media stuff right after we log off. We'll also put the screen up of the points from today. But if you can text that number, 833-489-7279. Text that number if you want to join with us. Text those 2 words, Join Victory. If you are needing prayer, text that number as well. Or you can shoot us an email for prayer at info@everythingvictory.org, and we will pray for you. If you never accepted God in your life and just said, I don't want to join your church preacher, but I just want to accept God in my life, shoot us a text message and tell us about your experience with it, and then we'll be praying with you and praying for you. That you say, God, I believe that your son Jesus died on the cross, that whatever is binding me up, I shall have the authority to be able to loose it right here on earth. You have that power. You have that authority. You can pray the sinner's prayer and tell him that you believe that God raised Jesus from the dead. And if you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart, then I believe, as the Bible says in Romans, that you shall be saved. We are a loving ministry here. If you are desiring to unite with us, we would love to have you. We thank you so much for everything that you all are doing, for the love and attention that you've shown this ministry. Y'all just shoot some hearts up, Victory. Show them how much love we actually show here at the Victory Community Church. Couple of quick announcements, and then we're going to turn it over to our to allow you all to give, and then we'll be out of your way. You'll see us on Zoom on Tuesday night. Quick announcements. First announcement is this Tuesday at 7 p.m. we will have Tune Up Tuesday. I promise you, y'all, they've been fire. I've been enjoying teaching, and I hope y'all have been enjoying coming to experience what God is doing. Tuesday at 7 p.m. And also Wednesday at 7 p.m. is our prayer call at 7 o'clock. Shoot us some information, shoot us some love, and you'll be able to join with us in prayer on Zoom. These flyers will be on our social media, on Facebook. And before we go, we just want to do our declaration. First Lady's going to do it with me today. Our declaration for our giving. I want to thank you. Let me show you my face real quick. I want to show you my face. I want to thank you all for being responsible in your giving and responsive in your giving. Let's continue to do what we've been doing. God has been faithful and kind to the ministry these last couple of weeks, and I know that God is going to continue doing what He's already done. We have multiple ways that you can give, but I just want to take time to thank you for your giving. Thank you for your appreciation for the ministry and for what you do. Let's do our declaration, and I ask that you do it right there from your home, right there where you are. If you're watching us, please quote this declaration with us, and I'm gonna ask that you receive the benefit and the blessing through your gifts that you're going to give today. Our declaration says, because God loves to see me prosper, I am believing Him for jobs and better jobs, advancements, raises and bonuses, God ideas and strategies, debts paid off, expenses decreased, blessings and increases, financial freedom and breakthroughs. Amen. I love y'all. See y'all later.
Look at this. I can't get down out this.